Welcome to Ag on the Edge, the podcast taking back the conversation about Ventura County agriculture. I'm your host, Louise Lampera, and today we're joined by Mauricio Guardado, the General Manager of United Water Conservation District. Mauricio and I are going to be talking about challenges with water supply and water availability and how they impact agriculture. Have a listen. All right, well, we are joined today here by a very special guest, and someone who I am very pleased to call not just a colleague, but a friend, Mauricio Guardado, who's the General Manager of United Water. And welcome, Mauricio. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Louise. A pleasure to be here.
So I kind of want to just jump in, and I'd like to actually start with, you came to United Water in 2015, or around that time period, and that was before I was involved in agricultural and water issues, etc. But I do have a recollection of the environment was different then than what we're experiencing today. There were articles in the newspaper about one water district suing another, with a city suing both, and lots of conflict internally amongst the people who supply us with water, and then the constituents who use that water. And that's changed since you've come to United, and you had a lot to do with that. So I'm hoping we can talk a bit about that.
Sure. Yeah, and I don't know how much I really had to do with that, but I know I should have taken somebody's advice when I was, I think, interviewing, and one of the board members after the interview stood up and pat me on the shoulder and said, be careful what you ask for at the end of the interview. But yeah, getting to United, I just I think there was a lot of tension, in the industry, and like you said, cities and county and water agencies and farmers all maybe not aligned on what could have been some common interest. So yeah, my first year going around, because I really didn't know a whole lot of people here in Ventura County when I started with United, so deciding to go around to do some meet and greets. They turned into meet and beats. Found out real quick where a lot of people's positions were, but I think over time, setting aside some differences, focusing on some common interests, I think help bring the temperature down a little bit. And I think today, so many folks are really focused. I think mission focused and understand what's the best for the end user, for the community. And there's a lot more focus, there. Are we perfect? No. Are there still some battles out there? Are there still some disagreements? Of course. But I think in the long run, there's been a lot of effort, a lot of collaboration in trying to do the right things right. And I think we're moving in the right direction. There are a lot of incredible proposed projects. I think there's a lot more collaboration. But yeah, certainly the first couple of years at United wasn't easy. Definitely.
And I think one of the things that United put in place under your leadership were these water summits, right?
Yeah.
And the first one, 2019. Tell me about that. Was everybody excited? What?
Well, I don't know if I would say excited. I think a lot of people were questioning the why. What's the goal? Why have this summit? And the staff at United Water Conservation District, we looked at it. Hey, there's clearly needs to be some change in Ventura County as far as pushing towards sustainability. We were in this mega drought, very dry periods. You look around and there wasn't like a major project done for about 35 years that was really enhancing supplemental water supply. So we knew we couldn't do it alone. So the whole goal of the Water Sustainability Summit was to put a lot of these concepts into action. But knowing we couldn't do it alone, you really need a regional approach. You take a regional approach, there's economies of scale, you cut down on redundancies, and it really starts helping people collaborate more, because when you start putting those things on paper, you see the multi-beneficial use of a lot of the sustainability projects. I think it starts becoming a little bit clear over time on where everybody can contribute, and who can have an impact. And with that summit, the goal was to bring legislators, regulators, key stakeholders, staff from all the various cities and water agencies and business owners, residents even. I mean, we just have a diverse group of people, consultants, because to take a regional approach and to really get these projects done, designed, analyzed, constructed, implemented, you're going to need consultants, you're going to need regulators, you're going to need the legislators to help fund or develop good sound policies to help facilitate the implementation of these projects. You need approvals from ratepayers, and certainly alignments of boards and city councils. And I think over the last 4 summits, we've been able to achieve that. So we've gone from concept for many of these sustainability projects to actually implementation mode. And today we have already checked so many boxes. One of the goals of the summit, one of the projects was to try to maximize our state water. We're a state contractor, California State Water Project, and cultivating partnerships that had unused allocation. We worked with them, created some water agreements, water arrangements, and we started bringing in tens of thousands of additional acre feet of water supply here to Ventura County.
Wow.
And then, so that was one of them. And then again, a lot of these projects are already in implementation mode. One of the more exciting ones is working with the United States Navy, and we have this extraction barrier brackish water treatment plant that we're working in partnership with the Navy, and that'll be a water treatment facility that will clean up the blackish seawater intrusion plume that's migrated inland, and also create a freshwater supply, drawing that seawater in and providing a continuous source of supply. So the goal of the summit, and again, we're well into implementation mode, is to actually be drought tolerant and not have to experience these incredible cuts and really bad resource circumstances that we find ourselves in when there's no precipitation.
Yeah. So the project with the Navy, I know it's a lot of times what we experience here on the local level, right, is that it's hard to get the attention of the layers of government above.
Right.
Did United approach the Navy? Did the Navy approach United? How did that partnership come about?
It's a great story, and you provide access to these tours of facilities. We love to give tours of the facilities, so should demonstrate what people are paying for, right? We have these facilities, they're in operation, they put the water resource to beneficial use for everybody. And so Captain Chisholm, at the time, was with the Navy, and he was out on a tour with some of his staff, and we were talking some shop, and we were at one of our facilities, El Rio, which produces, we pump water and treat water and convey it as a wholesaler to various cities like Oxnard, Beach District, Port Hueneme, and the Navy is a recipient of that water as well.
Okay.
And so in our concepts of sustainability projects, we actually had just a rough concept that we would potentially drill some wells inland to try to pump and treat to try to clean up this seawater intrusion plume, this brackish water plume. Obviously poor water quality, nobody can use it. And in talking with the captain, next thing you know, we're out on the base looking at potential spots, and next thing you know, because the Navy had their own charter to expand their programs, and the last thing they want is to have to deal with water supply in the staging an emergency. So it was very important for them to have a redundant source of supply. Next thing you know, a conversation turned into a field visit, looking at different sites that we can potentially put wells on, extract it from the coast So now the whole concept is to draw that contaminated plume towards the coast, much like what the Freeman diversion does when we divert and recharge water back into the ground. It's pushing back that plume. This is going to help draw that plume up, create a freshwater plume, but also draw the seawater in as well, desalinate it, treat it, and we have the option for potable water treatment. We send to the Navy. We can treat it to irrigation standards for agriculture, and we could also actually send it up to our recharge basins when it's wet or demands are low. We'll always have some place to put that water. So it checks so many boxes. It's a multifaceted project with multiple beneficial uses for the public, for the military, and for agriculture. And again, one of these major endeavors to help through the dry periods, to have this continuous source of supply to help prevent the depletion of the groundwater supply.
And just because I know you're a registered civil engineer, you work with hydrologists. I'm neither, but to make sure that I understand how the science of all of this works, how the hydrology of all of this works, is the way the recharge basins is it's almost like head pressure.
That's
is
right.
that correct? Pushing out against the constant push of the ocean to draw salt water into our groundwater aquifer. Is
That's
that
right.
correct?
Well, yeah, and so anytime, it has a lot to do with that head pressure, because when groundwater levels go below the seawater level,
Okay.
and pumping continues to occur, that head pressure from the ocean is greater than the groundwater pressure, and that's what creates the migration inland. So the idea is the more you can fill up the basins, the more you can create and bring back in that plume, create this trough. Those are the kind of things that are going to prevent that seawater intrusion from migrating ever again inland. So that's pretty simplistic way to look at it. Obviously, there's a lot involved
Unfortunately, it has to be simplistic for me to understand.
There's groundwater modeling, there's hydrogeology, there's a lot of different factors, engineering that goes into obviously a lot of these projects. But essentially, we're trying to for about 100 years now, there really hasn't been a full solution to the seawater intrusion issue until now. This project will take care of that. Again, working in conjunction with the Freeman diversion and other projects, it's a game changer. This is going to be one of those legacy projects, much like the folks before us at United Water that had the fortitude and the passion to move towards the construction of the Santa Felicia Dam to create Lake Piru, and the Freeman diversion, and all these major pieces of infrastructure that has really changed the landscape of Ventura County. I mean, to help it grow, develop, for farmland to thrive, for businesses to flourish, and for the people to have what they need to live. I mean, that's what gets me up in the morning. It's rallying around that noble cause and continuing that mission that they started here at United, just to keep moving that forward.
And the fact that something so innovative in the infrastructure of our truly one of our major water supplies in Ventura County, like you had mentioned at the beginning, that it had been 30 some odd years since there had been any sort of infrastructure upgrades, and so we've been coasting on the tails of the folks who were farsighted before us.
That's right.
So it's exciting to see that we can be just as farsighted today.
Absolutely. And people are going to rely on us in 50 years from now, 100 years from now, and so to have that innovation, to again have the fortitude, because it's not easy, right? And certainly these facilities aren't cheap, but again, another step for the community of Ventura County, and for the businesses and the farmers and ranchers of Ventura County to have this reliable source of supply that will continue even through the driest periods, I think is just essential, for the region. And yes, it'll be something that again will take care of the region, the community for decades to come.
And without drawing from another water source
That's
either,
right.
which is the truly amazing part.
And we'll be drawing from the ocean.
Right.
That
right.
would be a water, but again, I mean, there's a lot of projects like that, but I don't think there's any one quite like this one, where the conventional way of trying to combat seawater would be taking water and injecting it, creating this curtain to prevent the seawater from migrating, and that's worked, but you need water to do that.
Right.
And so this concept, again, will hopefully bring a continuous source of supply again, even when it's wet, we'll have somewhere to put this water. So again, very innovative. We've got some incredible staff, and even staff that no longer with United, that again brainstormed, come up with the concept. We were able to test it out. We've got a very sophisticated groundwater model that assisted us to make these tough decisions, and we're on our way. We've got the first phase about to start. Agreements are already executed with the Navy, and we're moving.
Wow.
We're putting the talk into action.
So that's great to see, that we are moving forward, that new infrastructure is being considered and installed. What happened, though, in those 30 some odd years? Why did we stop innovating? Why did we?
Well, I think, again, it's a number of things in my observation. Dry periods, right? So water's not flowing, but there still needs to be a pumping allocation, for people to utilize. But on top of that, again, some of the things that people aren't talking about, Louise, are is that there's so much evidence out there that that suggests that a lot of times these really bad drought circumstances could be manufactured as well. When you look at the infrastructure in California, some brilliant people put this infrastructure together: storage, reservoirs, the conveyance systems.
Yeah.
They understood. They had data. They understood that in California there's dry cycles and there's wet cycles, and that's why they designed the infrastructure the way they did. Now, but over time, through these arbitrary interpretations of environmental policy or these stringent regulations that are imposed on water deliveries, on water conveyance, on allocations, well, when you think about it, if during the wet years you can't fill your reservoir because you have to allow water to pass by it for, say, critical habitat or a particular type of species, well, when the dry period comes, you're not dealing with your full storage allotment, right?
Right.
Or if you've been relying on diversion rates to put water and recharge it back into the ground, well, if a third of that is removed from your operation, well, when the dry periods come, that's that much less that you have to work with. And it's you're constantly dealing with less. So then the message is cut. The phrase is, "Oh, brown's the new green." It doesn't have to be that way. I mean, if you follow the regulation trail, and it's what I found during the drought that people really didn't understand. It wasn't just about the dry period. It was about not having the resources available to be able to get through those dry periods. And there was an LA Times investigative piece that put out that 95% of the water in California goes to the ocean. 95% of the fresh water. There was another study, about 85% through universities, that was able to confirm that about 85. So 85 to 95% of the fresh water in California releases to the ocean.
That's rainfall, that's snow melt.
Rainfall, that's snow melt. And we, just here in our region, we were looking back, and And at one period of time, there was a number of about 6 million acre feet of water being bypassed the reservoirs, being bypassed diversion structures, going directly to the ocean for environmental purposes, despite the science showing otherwise. So unfortunately, regulators, certain regulating departments, activists especially, ignore the science and won't consider the right science, and now just start regulating the resource that could otherwise fill or go to beneficial use for disadvantaged communities, for farming, for just the community itself. And there's a balance. Yes, we all want to be really great stewards of the environment, and you can do that. But if we just took half of that amount during that drought period, every reservoir in California would have been full.
So that's 6 million acre feet. What does that mean? Like how many households is that? How many people could that be?
It's incredible. So about 1 million acre feet is something like over 320 billion gallons.
Okay.
So
a huge amount of water.
Huge amount of water. Huge amount. I mean, 1 acre foot of water can serve two households for a full year. I mean, that's how much water we're talking about. So it's unfortunate because there's subsidence that's occurring, obviously, because groundwater basins can't be replenished. Reservoirs were going dry, as it was all over the news, and yet the science that has been conducted, that has been ignored, would suggest it didn't have to be that way. And that's what I think just the regular, average Joe doesn't understand, because they're not in it. They rely on agencies like United Water and others to make sure that resource is available for them. And when it's not, obviously people go out of their minds, and rightly so, because they're paying a rate, they're expecting that resource. You're telling them, here's how much it's going to cost to make sure you have this, and then one day it's not there. And again, I go back and I think the water industry lost really major important opportunity. We were focusing on, it was dry, and there's a drought. I think the drought continues because we still haven't replenished the groundwater basins to the levels we need to. Yet very few were talking about, well, how did this happen? What were the other factors that contributed to this? Why weren't reservoirs full? Why weren't groundwater basins full? Why weren't we able to utilize more of these supplemental sources of supply or other types of projects like recycle water, where regulation obstructs and stifles this progress? And so until collectively, I think we all come together and really force that hand, I don't know that much will change. And you got to figure, are we just setting ourselves up still for the next time this happens?
For the next 2-3
but
years.
If you follow that regulatory, you'll see how much money is wasted on mitigation, on regulatory compliance, that the residents of every region has to shoulder that expense. It's astronomical. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars going towards legal fees, regulatory mitigation, and the like, all for less resource. And so you spend all this money, you spend all this time, and the grand prize is less water. And it certainly doesn't have to be that way in the state of California. We've got an incredible infrastructure. We have water resources that we could put to beneficial use, and we're just not maximizing it.
And you say that some of these allocations of what had to flow out to the ocean weren't based in science. Were they? Do you mean they were flowing at the wrong times? That the sustainable amount of water for fish is less, or what? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I could give you a very specific example here.
Please.
Locally.
Yeah.
So our Santa Felicia Dam, which creates Lake Piru, down off of Piru Creek. So in Piru Creek, the National Marine Fisheries Service has deemed that corridor as critical habitat for Southern California steelhead trout. So they've deemed it critical habitat. We have to have continuous releases from our dam to provide water to this so-called critical habitat, which flows downstream, which would otherwise be held in storage.
Okay.
So this was a regulation that was imposed on the residents of Ventura County through United Water from the National Marine Fisheries Service, despite since the late 1800s, all through the 1900s to today, overwhelming evidence that shows there has never been a Southern California steelhead ever seen, caught, observed, monitored in that corridor. And as a result, again, well, how can you lose storage? What kind of circumstances occur where we're losing water storage supply? That's one of them. You come in, they hit you with a jeopardy biological opinion that creates all of these mitigation measures that you've got to conform with. And currently, they are pushing for either removing our dam or installing a $200 million fish passage structure over, around, through somehow for a species that not only doesn't exist, never has existed. And when we try to push this to their upper management, unfortunately, there's just so little oversight. The local agencies get all the deference. And when we present all the evidence, all the science, all the monitoring, their response back to United Water is, well, absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence.
What?
So in other words, maintain a glacier in the Sahara Desert in case a polar bear shows up one day. So it's just nonsensical. Yet the residents of Ventura County are paying to facilitate this process. They're paying for the legal fees to fight this process. And so we're trying really hard, but that's just one example to where the regulation is out of control. Again, there could be a balance, but when this agency now imposes these environmental mitigation measures, obstructs the water storage supply, simply because they believe a Southern California steelhead may show up there one day, again, while there's been no evidence in the past, that's unacceptable. That's unacceptable for us and the community. But again, the people sitting around the kitchen table don't realize some of those circumstances are occurring.
Right, and don't realize that there seems to be quite a gap in the definition of critical habitat in the Endangered Species Act, which is only that habitat absolutely necessary to keep the species from going extinct, if my memory serves. There's other language, but that's pretty close, to this interpretation of, well, this habitat where they never were, and the fact that that could be applied with almost no oversight, with the end result being that the citizens of Ventura County, our industry, our agriculture, could lose Lake Piru entirely, is horrifying.
It is horrifying. Magnify this all over the state of California, and quite frankly, all over the west region of the United States. So many examples just like this, where the water is passing by storage or passing by diversion structures where the science just doesn't justify it. There are cases, certainly, again, you want to have, again, the balance to make sure that groundwater ecosystems are, have the resources they need to thrive, and the species has, proper migration corridors. But you can do that. It doesn't mean take all the water to do that. And just here locally, that's just the one example. And if we're not careful, the circumstance and scenario you just painted, is actually horrifying. And so we keep pushing back. In that instance, it's just unfortunate that there is little oversight because we've taken this to high levels of management in this organization. And even with showing their own charter, their own congressional act that gave them certain authorities. Mm-hmm. And for the National Marine Fisheries Service, one of the jurisdictional controls they would have depends on whether the species has spent most of its life in the ocean before they're present in a particular critical habitat. Well, if there's never been a recorded Southern California steelhead ever, that means there's been no time in the ocean. So why would the National Marine Fisheries Service have jurisdiction in this corridor? We presented that question, and they say, well, because it's critical habitat. Because the ESA that gives us the authority because it's designated critical habitat. Well, they designated the critical habitat. Right. Do you see how it's just, it's just this never-ending cycle that you can't get out of. It's a horrible circumstance that they place agencies in, and they can drag it out as long as they want to. So most people have to give up because it becomes very costly to fight the fight or to put the materials in front of the right people. And then when they kind of balance out those costs, it's more cost effective to just take less, less water and let them have it. And we just can't afford that here in Ventura County, and certainly we can't afford that at the Santa Felicia Dam. But that's our current reality, Louise. And again, a lot of people don't realize that. Right. And it imagine no Lake Piru, no conservation flows, in certain times of the year to help replenish groundwater basins. That would go away, and this place would look a lot different.
Well, it would look a lot different because a lot of the direct beneficiaries of the system that's currently in place are amazing agricultural valley down the Heritage Valley and the Oxnard Plain, which is some of the most productive farmland in the United States.
That's right.
And I remember you mentioning once that not only is the Oxnard Plain and Heritage Valley, Santa Clara River Valley so amazing for the on the surface, the agricultural assets and environment, but underground as well.
That's right.
That there's something very special about that area that makes it so that Ventura County became the agricultural region that it is. And could you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely, and we're very excited because we just recently received some incredible news to that end, where the state of California put out their semi-annual groundwater management report, and we're excited to announce through all this effort, we were number one in the entire state of California for the recharge rate per acre.
Wow.
So
wow.
Our recharge of acre feet per acre of the water that we're able to put in the ground that management plan was number one in the entire state of California.
And how much are we talking has been recharged in the last year or so?
So this from the 2023 report, it was almost 120,000 acre feet, and so that's obviously accumulated since then in 2024 significantly. So again, breaking all historical records for recharge rates. Groundwater basins are filling up. The upper basins are, are just about capping. We're seeing artesian conditions in people's wells downstream of our Freeman diversion. So, but I tell you, there's another side to that. If the residents, the community, didn't support United in its efforts to push back on the regulators, because all that could have went right by us. If they had their way, we wouldn't have diverted half of that. And so there were many attempts, even through the legal system, of the activists working and colluding with these regulatory agencies to cease and desist the Freeman diversion. And if they were successful in doing that, we wouldn't have anywhere close to the recharge rates that we're experiencing today. And then, as you said, I mean, we have a very special geology there at the Freeman diversion in the forebay, where we have such high percolation rates. So when we get water at the Freeman diversion and we start putting into our recharge basins, we get 12 to 14 feet of percolation rate per day. Now, a lot of places that have recharge basins, if you get 2 to 3 feet, they're high-fiving. That's a success.
Wow,
We have 12 to 14 feet. So we can put a lot of water in the ground. And then again, that goes to the beneficial use of everybody else. Cities, the county, farmers, ranchers, residents. But again, that could have been a completely different story. There would have been no historical records. We would still be in a tremendous, critically overdrafted groundwater basin if these activists were successful. Unfortunately, they weren't. But this region has an amazing geology. The 7 basins, groundwater basins that we manage, we've been able to really maximize those opportunities through recharge rates and releases from our dam. Very calculated releases. We just don't release an amount, and we really our staff are incredible in helping in determining what the greatest release would be for the appropriate recharge, along the conveyance system, and certainly what we can get at the Freeman to continue that effort downstream. So it's a very, very intricate system, and all gravity fed.
Wow.
All gravity fed.
So when you talk about diversion allocations and the like, so 'cause I think the average person thinks that water comes down, right, Piru, Santa Clara River, etc., and then when it gets to the Freeman Diversion Dam, everything gets diverted out. At least that's the way I've seen it presented in some commentary online, let's say. But that doesn't sound like that's the case. It sounds like it's very calculated, it's very balanced.
It is very balanced. We have an operational plan that has been approved, through our permitting through the state of California, and even on the federal regulatory side to operate the Freeman diversion. So no, there's adequate water going downstream to replenish and again for environmental purposes, for species migration. So we're well into compliance of that. We work very hard to ensure we do that so that the species aren't harmed. Every year, Louise, and we have the regulators out there. When it's summertime, we have to dewater the system. There's a mass survey that goes on the river to see if there were any Southern California steelhead that had perished through the operation. And since I've been at United, which is 9 years now, not one. And a lot of this effort was a result of one adult steelhead. Almost 20 years ago now, I think, that was found, the Freeman diversion, that perished. And as a result of that one fish, we find ourselves in this kind of circumstance. Wow. And it's very costly, and we're in the midst of designing a new fish passage structure. But to say that we're taking all the water is not true. And again, it's very calculated, and we work with the regulators day in and day out to ensure that our operating plan meets all the regulatory standards and the environmental standards. We have to, and that's a good thing. But it's extremely challenging because despite the successes, and despite us on video and monitoring fish actually successfully passing through the facility using the existing fish ladder, and the fact that we do the stream bed surveys and no Southern California steelhead have perished. So it's working, but despite all that, the regulatory agencies want more. They want to see more water go by and less that we divert, less to recharge, and less water for the population of Ventura County. We battle that every day, every single day.
Wow. And so very clear, that the existing system, as it's set up, as it's operating, it's made such a huge difference this year, especially in the groundwater basins, like you were saying. The fact that we're actually seeing some artisanal conditions, that's a positive thing, because that
Very much
means
so.
that the aquifer is recharging itself.
That's right. That's right.
Based on the diversions that you've been able to make. That's a very different picture than what was painted, let's say, even 2 years ago, right? 2021, 2022, there were, under SGMA, Sustainable Groundwater Management, the Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Basin has been talking and is intending up to 40% cuts in allocations for farmers growing on the Oxnard Plain there. Can we reverse that, do you think, with the efforts that United and others are doing?
100%. One of the, I think, benefits of the water sustainability summits that we've held the last 4 years has tried to help demonstrate that we don't need to cut our way out of this water situation that we find ourselves in during dry periods. We can build our way out. I mean, I think we're demonstrating that today through the improvements we've already made at the Freeman to take in the higher turbidity water, do something with it. So we've had this incredible reset button of filling up the groundwater basins and our storage facilities. Let's not waste that. And so you don't need to cut your way. That's the do nothing approach, Louise. If we do nothing, yes, certainly you're going to have to cut significantly if you want any type of water sustainability here in Ventura County. But that's not a very good mission. That's not a very good plan. And so we've worked hard for a lot of years, again, to develop the right plan and collaborate with regional folks that we're all working in our own roles for sustainability. And again, we're already in implementation mode. And partnerships are super important. We have some great partners out there, other water agencies, some 100 miles away, that have additional allocation of their state project that we've been able to execute a water agreement and arrangement with. So we've been able to bring those additional allocations here to Ventura County. But the projects, along with the operation itself, and certainly that still means people have to use water wisely. But there's no reason, Louise, when you look at the overall plan, that you need those significant cuts. Again, that's the do nothing approach, and the folks that I work with in Ventura County are anything but non-doers, including yourself.
Well, thank you.
Very much a doer. Very much a doer.
So even if we were to go through a period of drought, this is something where we actually have the ability to not harm our farmers, to not, and maybe with the end goal of ending some of the water war, internal water wars that we've seen, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
wow.
well, when you again, it's a collective plan, right? Not just one in and of itself is going to fix it all.
Right.
But when you look at a lot of these, the farming infrastructure and all of the investment they made in some very water efficient irrigation systems. I mean, some of the most efficient systems on the planet, very sophisticated, along with the sustainability plan, the ability to recharge the ground, really to harness and store water, the projects online that create new water sources. All those collective, there's not a doubt in my mind that if we collectively do this right, you would have to see anywhere near those cuts, even in the dry periods, because we'll have been prepared. Now, there's going to be some factors. Doesn't mean you just, pump the heck out of the
Right.
basins. Obviously there'll have to be those contingency plans, and it all, it depends on how dry it lasts, how long those periods last. But we've shown historically we've been able to get through that. But if we don't do something right now, today, on the regulatory front, which is just getting worse and more stringent, then that's going to be harder to stand by, because in order for this to be successful, you need to replenish the basins. You need to capture and store the water, and not be curtailed and obstructed to only do it halfway. And that seems to be the direction that these policies are taking us. So, we can't do it alone. I mean, we need businesses, farmers, ranchers, cities, agencies, all moving in that same direction. Otherwise, it's just going to get harder and harder. Interesting. I was thinking about this not too long ago, and I don't know if you've ever seen or heard of that movie, The Bug's Life.
Yes.
Well, I've listened to The Bug's Life more than I've watched it, because kids watching when they were little as as we're driving. But there was a scene where the grasshoppers are the dominant species, and they're all having a good time in this bar or whatever, and they're even wondering whether they should go back to the ant land, because they're having such a good time, and all those pesky ants, they're already under control anyway. What good are they? And then here comes the leader of the grasshoppers, right? And it gets all upset. And this is, we definitely have to go back. They have to be controlled. They have to be put in their place, because the minute those ants figure out they outnumber us 1,000 to 1, we're done. And I started thinking about it, and it, just in the kind of that funny way, putting it into our industry. The regulators love, and the activists love to divide and conquer. They want us divided. They want us focused on side deals, even though taking less, so you don't jump in and collaborate with everybody else. But their fear, the day we all collectively come together, which significantly outnumbers them, and you use all the resources from the different regions, the legislators from the different regions, and we push the right policy, that's when things are going to get better. And that's their biggest fear, because at that point, they don't have the control like they're used to. And so I'm still hopeful for that day, Louise. I've seen flashes of that working, and it couldn't be any more important today, just because of so much of the egregious acts that they're imposing on people and agencies and villainizing farming. I mean, really, growing food is a bad thing. Villainizing water agencies because they produce water so that you could live, you could thrive. It's all been put on this narrative, again, to help push their agenda, their regulation, so that water is curtailed, and more water is sent to the ocean, and less to what we need it for. And so I tell you, if anything, again, I couldn't ask for more if the collective region came together, and even beyond, to collectively understand our common interest and push that forward. I don't think there'd be anything that could stop us, and we could get the right policies in place, we can get the right balance, and everybody would flourish, including the environment, the species, because the studies have already been done to demonstrate that. It's just, unfortunately, the activists and the regulators won't consider any of it. I mean, we just saw it in the California Fish and Game Commission decision.
Yeah, and I was hoping that we could talk a little bit about that as well. That it was something that you actually, and United pulled together, really, the water agencies, or the water districts of Southern California, groups like CoLab, Farm Bureau, and we actually were able to push back against the recent decision from the Fish and Game Commission to list the Southern California steelhead as endangered under the state Endangered Species Act. I think some of the challenges that we as agriculture saw through that process is that we couldn't really even get a dialogue going.
That's right.
With the state agencies about what the potential impacts for agriculture could even be, or how they were going to enforce, water use, and how the future water allocations for our farmers. So we're very concerned about that. We were happy to see the coalition come together, but worst case scenario, what does this new determination, this new listing mean for Ventura County?
Well, it is all part of this overall goal that I think the regulators have, and that's again when you look at other circumstances, right, of all the things that have occurred in the past, there is a playbook that they have, and regulation plays a major part of that. So a decision like this increases the type of mitigation you would have to perform to comply. So for those who can't afford the mitigation, either there goes your resource or there goes your asset. Cease and desist, tear down. You'll have, if you can't comply, then that's what you're going to end up with. What's really disturbing is it almost seemed like the decision was already predetermined no matter what you provided. Because again, the evidence, the science is overwhelming, where they didn't have to make the decision that they did. And to list Southern California steelhead and rainbow trout as part of the California Endangered Species Act wasn't necessary. It comes down, again, part of the evidence is so they get creative and they they develop species using this distinct population segment category that they have at their disposal. So they've done that for Southern California steelhead, right? That's a distinct population segment. There's also another species just north of us, the South Central steelhead. Louise, despite those two species having the same genetics, well, they won't consider that, which would increase the population, right? They have no fish counts on rainbow trout. Had they had the right fish counts, they would see that population of rainbow trout is overwhelming. So when you combine the rainbow trout population with this similar genetics, you start to compose, is the species really endangered? It sounds like they're in abundance, that they're not in a decline, and maybe they're not completely on this huge uptick. But to not even consider those elements in the decision is very, very unfortunate, because that will impact people monetarily, resource-wise, and again, over time, if you don't have the right amount of water, lands are fallowed, right? We've seen that already happen in Central Valley of California.
Well, and even here in Ventura County,
even here in Ventura
followed.
County. And so, decisions like that, where you based on the commentary from that Fish and Game Commission, I don't know that they looked at any of the science. Predetermined decision, and then now the burden's all on us. So we're going to continue to fight that because it's wrong. Again, let science dictate the way. That way we all benefit, including the species. But to not take any of the data that was submitted in consideration, it's just not right. And again, people don't realize this. These commissions meet during the day. Not many people show up because it's not advertised well. Our coalition certainly is involved, right? But that's not enough. Especially when, again, the administrative record shows overwhelming evidence that at the very minimum, okay, let's investigate more. Let's have the dialogue again that we can't have.
Right.
Let's have that dialogue. Let's figure out the plan, the course. Okay, we understand where you want to go, but can we collectively go there? No, it's a very fine line. And again, it's all part of that agenda that they have. One more piece of regulatory bureaucracy that you have to navigate through that is extremely difficult and extremely expensive. And most don't have the resources or the wherewithal to get through it, and they know that.
Right.
And they know that. So another tactic is, by knowing that, they'll try to do some small side deal with another organization. Again, just, the proposal, it's bad, but it could be worse. So I'll take really bad, but because it could be worse. And then, they're hesitant to join a coalition. And I understand that, because, these regulatory agencies can be very, very retaliatory. I get that. But I do get the fact that if the day we all do come together, we can stop this. And I think, unfortunately, until we do, it's going to be more of the same. And I don't know what people's misery index is, what level they need to get at, but I can tell you it's not getting any better. It's only getting more difficult.
Because of the regulatory.
Because of these regulatory,
environment.
and you saw again what happened just recently at the Fish and Game Commission, and and again, it's just not happening here, but it's these circumstances are happening all over the Western Front.
Well, and I think too that one, like you had pointed out, these hearings and what's happening aren't well publicized. Right.
Right.
They are publicly announced, but you have to know where to look, or where to sign up, etc. to even know what's going on. Then what's released comes at the 11th hour, because all of the agenda documents, etc. legally don't have to be released until 72 hours before.
That's right.
Under the Brown Act. So most people who are out building their businesses, farming their land, living their lives, don't have time to become hydrologists.
That's right.
And review all of this, right? And then in this particular case, for me, the greatest frustration was that even the hearing itself was it was not designed to encourage future public participation.
You caught that too, huh?
I was I was able to provide some public comments at one of the hearings, and certain aspects, the environmental groups, other representatives were given 5, 6, 7 minutes to provide their testimony at the hearing. When my turn came up as a representative for agriculture, I was limited to 1 minute to give my...
Unacceptable.
And that certainly was designed to change the playing field, I believe.
That's right.
And
well, I could tell you, you saw it the first time around firsthand. So again, this is such a high level issue that is presented in front of that commission. So their job is they have to make an informed decision. That's what being on a board and council is all about,
yes.
right? Gathering information and making an informed decision. When here we have this incredible circumstance, and you have these activist groups able to give a 15, 20-minute presentation, and then it's my turn, and I was told I was able to, I was going to be afforded a 15-minute presentation. And when I showed up, they said, nope, sorry, you only get 5 minutes.
Oh.
So I had a 15-minute presentation, and now I had to give it in 5 minutes. So, and they wouldn't even give me the clicker. So it took more time, but I had to tell the individual, work on the computer, next slide, because now I have to go through and try to highlight certain slides and information to make sure that it got on the administrative record. And you know, if you look back at that video, as I'm presenting, the commission isn't even looking at me. They're not even engaged. They're not asking any questions. As a matter of fact, I think the president of the commission at the time before I got up there says, yeah, we've read all of the documents, just so, make this quick, essentially. I mean, here this major decision they have to make with all of the impacts.
Right. And it's highly technical.
Highly technical.
Scientific. Yeah.
You got 5 minutes when they already approved a 15-minute, and I didn't know it was cut until I got there.
Wow.
So, yeah, Louise, it's as you suggested, it almost formatted that way, right? Predetermined how this is going to go,
right.
For their own benefit, not for what that commission is supposed to stand for, and the processes and procedures that they're supposed to adhere to. So they're going to have a major challenge on their hand, because we can't give up. I mean, we can't afford to give up.
Right.
And you got to do the right things right. And this clearly is, these kind of circumstances. I mean, if this isn't government malfeasance, I don't know what is. It's just, I mean, it's extraordinary. But too much is at stake.
Right.
Way too much is at stake, because where will it stop? There's some folks that talked about, well, we don't have steelhead in our area. Why would we join the coalition? It's because they won't stop there. It might be steelhead today, but it'll be a butterfly, a lizard,
a plant
yeah. tomorrow, because they'll set a new precedent. And that's what we have to stop. And again, the ability for them to just create distinct population segments, really making up a species. And there's no oversight to hold these people accountable, or hold them accountable for the data or the science they're utilizing to make these decisions. I mean, if you and I did that in our job, we'd be gone. I mean, but this is our
right.
current reality. And again, not many people even understand a fraction of what's happening out there.
Right. And so what do we do then, right? How do we, United, other organizations, etc. United has been very active in trying to educate, particularly folks here in Ventura County, about the science, about the need for water infrastructure, what it means, and building support for those innovative projects. What's the next step then in making it so that every resident here in the county understands the critical nature of these fights and can weigh in, so that we can reach this balanced, scientifically based position where everyone's needs are taken care of?
Well, I think it starts with your leadership here, Louise. I mean, doing something like this, to get the word out, to get the right messaging out, that we're not afforded maybe in some other media outlets, right? So that people can hear the whole story and not just components of the story. And so, yeah, I think what we can do is, I'll go back to, a unified front. Unfortunately, if it's just a few of us pushing back, well, you just look, oh, there goes United again. Look at those complainers. But if it's a huge coalition, then it's a problem. Right? And I think a larger coalition, you start getting more legislators educated and understanding the circumstances or the consequences down the road for them at some point in time. That would be the only way. They're just not feeling any pressure right now. So if they're not feeling any pressure, and there's no oversight and no accountability, well, I think as one of our past presidents once said, it was Obama, where there's no accountability, there you will find corruption. And that's kind of what it feels like. If they're just able to make these decisions based on an agenda rather than on the science and the benefit for the environment and the people, that's a real problem. And that's the problem we're facing today. And again, not just here. And if the residents would only see just how much money has to go to this effort unnecessarily, blow their minds, and especially in this day and age where the cost of everything has gone up. I mean, we have families that barely squeaking by because the cost of living is so high, and when you compound it with some of these unnecessary costs that you have to pass through to the resident, it makes you sick to your stomach. And so what we can do is keep getting the word out to the right people. I think creating a stronger, greater coalition moving forward, and getting the legislators involved. They work for us. They're here for us. And I think we've seen some signs of that, which has been very encouraging. But we got to do more. And unfortunately, the only thing they're responding to now is lawsuits. But again, those are costly. But if you don't, then there's no way to create the awareness. Some of the successes we've had in the courtroom is because you do get an opportunity to show your work.
Right.
And when they don't have anything, it's clear what the decision should be. And we've been seeing more and more of that. I mean, it is, if we put down all of the requirements that regulatory agencies are demanding based on them having zero information, zero data, or certainly not the right data, it'd blow your mind. And so unfortunately right now, lawsuits are the only way to get that information out. It's very unfortunate. You wish you could have that dialogue, sit down and at a table and work it through and talk it through. And that's impossible, unless you do what they say. When they say it, they're going to make life very, very difficult for you.
And I think it's important too that the average person, the property owner, the water user, it also needs to understand that because that dialogue, that essential dialogue, where we get in the weeds across a table, and work towards that common goal, right? What is it you, agency, are looking to achieve? This is what we're looking to achieve. Great. How do we get there together? Right?
That's right.
Until we have that before any decision is made, the water user, the citizen, is actually paying for both sides of the fight.
That's right. That's a very good point.
So the entire cost is being borne.
The entire cost. And another example, and again, these examples are trying to put it in perspective, right? Some context of, trying to figure out why this is happening or what's happening. The regulators designed and provided the criteria for this hardened ramp fish passage structure in Santa Paula Creek. And the first major storm, it was obliterated. So it didn't work. And essentially the regulators, it didn't quite work out the way we had hoped. But now, Army Corps and others are on the hook for the cost to repair it, even though it was the regulators' recommendation and design. Same thing happened at our Freeman diversion. They say our current fish passage, even though we show passing fish, they deemed it not optimal. So the activists sued us, and there was a decision, and we obviously have to do a new fish passage structure. Okay, that decision was made, but again, we just didn't design and throw a fish ladder into the design and construction plans of the Freeman diversion. It was the regulatory agencies out there monitoring, survey, provided us with the design criteria, and even selected that fish passage structure. they're saying it's not optimal, but now we're on the hook to replace it. Again, so the residents are on the hook based on their suggestion, their design criteria. So they're trying to do the same now with the new fish passage structure. So why would we keep doing it that way if their criteria continues to fail? And so one example is, they, for the longest time, and we'll have all the letters, and they kept citing letters and administrative record of not wanting a flushing channel in the new fish passage structure. And that's necessary, for sedimentation management. And so until we got into the lab, we demonstrated how that would work, then we got concurrence, right? But to the point you were making earlier, you have to get at the table in the lab, run the scenarios, so everybody's engaged and participating to make that decision moving forward. And in that process, is they really, I'm convinced, success is not part of their business model. I mean, because they threw out 4 or 5 alternatives that they wanted to try with the model. Every one of them failed, and failed miserably. So we were able to get the right design criteria for that particular component. Fast forward, we have a new issue with conflicts and disagreements on a new design criteria component. So what was successful last time?
Right.
Get to the lab, work it out, so you can see it, feel it, touch it. So we suggested that's because we had success there. Let's do that again for this block, right? We're at a standstill, but let's go work that out. Nothing. They refused to show up for a workshop. We even invite them out because we have this incredible opportunity while the river's flowing in the exact location that there's conflict, and they have other suggestions or recommendations. We could actually bend boots on the ground, seeing like real time the river flowing in this particular location. Not just a model. In reality, to figure this out, not one representative showed up. Not one. So here's this species that they claim is in dire straits. This is critical design criteria that must be implemented into the design. And you couldn't even send a staffer out to even just take notes? Not one person from California Department of Fish and Wildlife, the National Marine Fisheries Service, any of the activists, nobody showed up. So we still did the science and the monitoring so that we can, register the data. But therein lies, there's another example where they don't want to know because it might work. It might be something other than their narrative. And they're scared to death to go back on anything. It's like, dig your heels in to the death on what we're demanding, despite you demonstrating some other way towards that success. That's another frustration. So then again, now you got to take more time to, instead of just getting some concurrence or even some other suggestions maybe they would have out there. Nope, now you have to go through the back and forth letters again, more time, more money. It's a never-ending cycle.
Yeah, and when you say to the death, it's clearly not to the death of steelhead because the existing fish ladder is working.
That's right.
And there is no evidence of loss of steelhead because of it. So which even raises the question of what is optimal, right? I would argue that it is it's operating optimally. It is doing what it was intended. So to even try to narrow down what the goal is seems to be a challenge.
Very challenging, because you could have a permit that provides you the right approvals to operate over a period of time. At any time they can change that. We've had a permit to operate the Freeman Diversion through the state of California since the 90s. And in that permit, it states very clearly that this operating plan is approved in perpetuity. This is how we can operate in perpetuity. And when California Department of Fish and Wildlife wanted us to modify some things, and we showed them, well, no, here's our operating plan. You know, this is where the terminus of the rivers, you have no jurisdiction in the facility. And we showed them that in perpetuity, this is our plan, this is our permit. Their response was, well, in perpetuity doesn't mean forever. I mean, these are the kind of response. Now, what are you supposed to do with that? In perpetuity doesn't mean forever. Right. Absence of, evidence isn't evidence of absence. I mean, what are you supposed to do when the other side, who's controlling this process, has that kind of attitude, has that mindset? I mean, it's extremely difficult. And again, to get through it, time, money, resources that the end user has to absorb.
Mm-hmm. And that's time, money, resources that are being pulled away from these innovative projects as well. Exactly. Like the project with the Navy, like enhancing our recharge basins, etc. And yet, despite all of these challenges, United still was the ¡1 recharge in the state, which is amazing.
No matter how hard they tried, we were still able to accomplish that. And our lake is full.
Yes.
Again, despite all the attempts, the lake is full, the groundwater basins are full, and it took a lot of hard work, a lot of rolling up the sleeves, a lot of persistence. But again, we didn't do it alone. We've got an aligned board who's mission focused, with staff who are incredible at United Water. But again, it was the coalition, Louise, yourself and so many others, again, working together, other cities, other water agencies, other businesses, that, boy, when United gets those support letters or the engagement in those coalitions, that fires up, knowing that, okay, we can do this. Mm-hmm. And we've shown we can do it. We can do it. It's, we're turning the tanker, slowly, but imagine what we could do if everyone was rowing in that direction, on our end. It would be amazing. And, to your point, the amount of money that is spent on legal fees, for attorneys and mitigation measures, mm-hmm. and redundant, structures. If you took collectively here in Ventura County, not just United Service Area, but here in Ventura County, it would have afforded all of these sustainability projects would have been already paid for.
Wow.
That's the crazy thing about it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, well, one last question.
Sure.
Mauricio, and we may have already touched on it because I can't think of any better news than the recharge stuff. But so, what is some of the best news that you've heard for agriculture in the last week or so?
Well, they're working on the farm bill.
Yes.
That's good news.
Yes.
But I think here locally, for the farmers, I mean, the investment that they put in, again, the farmers, 100 years ago to today, I think the good news for agriculture would be we are mission focused. You have the resource to continue to farm, not experiencing the following circumstances, mm-hmm. that so many other places are experiencing. But here in our service area, not only are they have the resource today to continue their business, to continue growing the food for all of us to benefit from, but moving forward looks even better. And I know farmers need certainty, farmers need sustainability, and United Water Conservation District is going to provide that.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mauricio, for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
For all your knowledge and for this fantastic conversation.
No, really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, Louise.
Well, thank you.
All right.
And thank you for joining us for another episode of Ag on the Edge. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation, and be sure to like and subscribe so that you don't miss any future episodes. Standing up.